We're talking to legendary climber, explorer, author, John Long. John, thank you for joining us.
Not a problem. I hope you guys can line cut this. Or do you have to actually record and play the whole damn thing? Because I'm not going to be interesting the whole time.
You're not? We're hoping that you're going to be great.
Well, can't you like cut me and make me sound intelligent and shit?
Jay, what do you think?
I'm kidding.
What the frig? Tell us about your new book, The Stonemasters. Great book. Thank you for writing that.
We're talking about the big coffee table book, right?
Yeah. Yes, John.
Well, actually, that's Dean Fidelman, the photographer, the one guy, the same guy that does stone nudes and all those other things. He had been collecting photos for, I don't know, 20 years or so. He's got a whole bunch of different pictures and a whole bunch of different anecdotes, and then one thing led to the next, and he asked me whether I wanted to do a book, and I wasn't really sure whether, as I'd said in the introduction, I wasn't sure that those old stories that went into that book were still relevant enough to be, interesting to anybody these days. So I was a little bit hesitant about doing the book. It wasn't going to take a whole lot of work on my end because I was really going to just drop in existing stuff, so I didn't have to write too much original material for it. So it wasn't hesitant because of the workload or potential workload. It was just because I was wondering whether, as I said, whether that material was relevant and was worth actually going back into, because I really hadn't looked at a lot of those stories in like at least 15 years. But we went ahead and went for it. There's a big thread about the Stonemasters on Super Topo, and that went for months and tens of thousands of posts, and I was able to pull a bunch of information off of that and turn those into sidebars and what have you. So by the time I was done sort of amalgamating this whole universe of different stuff about the Stonemasters, we had 100 pages of fairly interesting text, and so Dean pulled together what shots he thought were consistent with and supported the text, and we gave it to first time I actually had worked with a world-class book designer, this guy Tom Adler, and between us, we came up with that book, and I think it surprised everybody. It came out pretty well, and for what it was supposed to do, which is be representative of a certain time in space and time per rock climbing, I think it did about as well as we could do. So, it's old stuff, but nevertheless, it has a timeless thing running through the middle of it, that whole sense of adventure and what have you, and the awe of being out there and doing new things. So hopefully that's alive and well enough in the text and in the pictures and the sort of overall book to where people can open up and feel some kind of visceral experience from it. And that's the idea.
So for people who don't know, the Stonemasters, would they be considered the new Vulgarians?
No, I don't think the Stonemasters would be really considered anything but the Stonemasters. It's sort of a unique group. Not so unique to where you couldn't contrast them with anybody, of course, but the Stonemasters came along at right after the golden era in Yosemite, which I think was probably over and was really over. I mean, if you look at it historically, it was probably over in 1966.
Whoa, dude.
But we'll say 1970, and then a few years after that, the Stonemasters came along with a completely different orientation towards performance and a sort of a different ethos, and I mean it was just a different thing. So
what was the mindset of the Stonemaster?
Well, before, I think the golden age people, the idea was just to do stuff. I mean, going to Yosemite from after El Cap and Half Dome were done in the late 50s, go up there, and basically we're talking about the 60s. So going up there in the 60s, the stuff was so awesome and so big, and the gear was so crude and the techniques were so unproven.
Whoa.
That simply getting up stuff was in and of itself epic and monumental. But by the time that by the time 1966 came around, when Royal Robbins soloed a second ascent of the mirror wall on El Cap. The techniques and the gear come quite a ways, and so it wasn't a matter of just getting up things anymore. That wasn't enough, and but that generation had pretty much played its hand out because everybody has about 10 years, right? So our generation came along. Most of us came from sport backgrounds, so it became performance oriented, and that's really pretty much how we did things a little bit differently than the previous generation once we went after just to see how hard the stuff we could do.
What did you have to climb to be a Stonemaster?
Originally, the criteria was you had to climb a route at Suicide Rock, which is where we all sort of originated or came of age. And the route was called Valhalla, and it was a 3-pitch route and one of the first 511 routes in the United States. So, or multi-pitch 511 routes in the United States. So that was it. And if you could climb that, which few people could back then you were a Stonemaster.
So who were the early Stonemasters?
Early Stonemasters were myself, Rick Akamatsu, Richard Harrison, Rob Muir, Mike Graham, John Backer, and Sobin Sorensen.
Not Ron Kalk?
Kalk was a little bit later, about a year or two later.
So, John, you did the first one-day ascent of the nose on the El Cap. Mm-hmm. Tell us about that. Who'd you do that with?
Jim Bridwell and Billy Westbay. Labor Day, 1975. I was still I guess I was in college then, just barely. The thing was, at that time there was a lot of talk about some very prestigious, at least in the climbing world at large, speed ascents that were done. One of which was the Eiger in 10 hours by Howler and Messner, and a couple other big things. And Bridwell, who had always had a real sense for history, said, "Look, we have to do one of these speed climbs that puts Yosemite on the map a little bit ahead of all these other things that are going on." And the only one that really made sense at the time was to try to do the nose. And had I really known, had I known what I do now, the first time I climbed El Cap with Ron Fawcett in 1973.
Ron Fawcett.
The British climber.
Sure.
He just had a book come out. We got 3/4 of the way up of the thing, and it was only early afternoon, and it was really, really hot. And I made the suggestion, I said, why don't we just stop here on Camp 5 or wherever we were? Yeah, and we did. But had I pushed on, we could have done it then, 2 years before. Didn't occur to me at the time. Did it later, by the time we got to doing it around 1975, it was easy. It was easy for us to do. We'd all climbed El Cap a bunch of times. We could climb 512. And a route like the nose was simple to begin with. If you're a world-class climber that's real fit, getting up the nose is not a question. It's just a matter of how quick you can do it. So it was an easy thing to do then for us, given where we were. Let me rephrase it. El Cap in a day is never easy, just because it takes a lot of effort. But technically, it wasn't something we were going, I can't believe we're doing this. It wasn't like that at all. When we got to the top of Boot Flake at like 7:15 in the morning, and we just put it in cruise control because we knew the rest of it was simple. It never occurred to us at that time to try to go for an hour or a minute count. It was just to do the thing in daylight, while there was still some daylight, enough daylight to get down, and we did. After we got to the top of the Boot, we just basically just sort of fiddling around and got to the top 10 hours later. But it isn't, El Cap then, to world-class climbers in 1975, even then, El Cap in a day wasn't any kind of great deal. I mean, it was a psychological thing, but, it was never, to the best climbers of the day, it was never something that you get on and go, wow, I can't believe we're doing this. It was just another thing to do.
Can we talk about soloing?
Sure.
So, John, how did you get into soloing? I know you got Backer into it. We interviewed Backer a while ago, and he imitated you, and he said...